Taiwan is almost certain to introduce a capital gains tax on share sales. That's according to the head of the Taiwan Stock Exchange. Markets have plummeted, and they did plummet the last time such a levy was proposed more than 20 years ago. But TAIEX's chairman, Chief Chi, says that this time around, the market is much more better prepared.
Back to those times, okay, 95% they are so-called individuals. So the individual investors, their behavior are not so easy to.
The market slumped 33% in 1 month.
Correct. In 19 consecutive trading days. Okay, I think that is horrible.
Will the same thing happen if they approve it?
No, I don't think so. Because right now, as let's say, okay, the foreign investors nowadays they account 1/3. Okay. Then for the other institutional investors, they account somewhere between 12% to 15%. Okay, so over there, that is over 40%. That's number one. Number two, right now, the whole market, we have 1,500 listing company compared to just 100, slightly more than 100 back to those times. Number three, nowadays, the information issue, the inside trading issue, I don't want to say they are gone, okay, but the situation is very much improved and different from those times. So the market certainly will still react to this, but I think that is because how the capital gain tax is going to be taxed, that is still not so clear, okay, so that will cause some kind of concern for uncertainty.
Do you think it will happen?
You mean the capital gain tax? No, this time, 99% it will happen. Okay, and it will happen I think in a very positive way. Positive way means to the society, to the market. Okay, that can be accepted.
Why do you need it?
For fairness. For additional tax revenue. It's just as simple as that.
Reduced manufacturing in China last month and continued Eurozone problems weighed heavily on investors' minds today. These worries, combined with uncertainty over the capital gains tax, sent the Taiwan Stock Exchange reeling today. The TAIEX fell below 7,200 within 10 minutes of opening. It finished at 7,106, a decline of 2.68%.
Another amendment up for vote tomorrow could lead to a capital gains tax on securities.
Well, the KMT has warned its lawmakers they must vote in favor of it. But some in the KMT believe the timing is wrong considering the state of the global economy.
The Taiwan Stock Exchange dropped by about 0.3% on very low turnover of just 53 billion NT.
In the end, the TAIEX was able to finish at 7,008. On turnover of 53.4 billion NT dollars. Over the past 4 months, the TAIEX has shed 3 trillion NT dollars, equal to 1/5 of Taiwan's GDP.
The KMT used its majority to pass legislation that left opposition parties fuming.
Starting from next January, most investors will pay a securities transaction tax when the TAIEX is above 8,500 points. The tax will be between 2 and 0.06%. Certain large investors will have to pay a tax on their gains. Their tax on gains will be 15%. Discounts are offered for investors who hold on to their shares. Early today, the TAIEX went up by 33 points, surpassing the 7,000-point barrier. But the gains soon disappeared, and the index closed at 6,970, down 8 points. Turnover was just 60.3 billion NT.
The highest officials went to the front lines to say this thing had to be implemented. It's not following public opinion. It's economic autocracy. By chasing this false reputation, they're implementing the wrong policy. It's society's loss.
And many people blame low turnover on the Taiwan Stock Exchange over the past few months on the new capital gains tax.
And while President Ma Ying-jeou has said the policy could be looked at, Finance Minister Zhang Shenghe said the tax should remain in place a year before any review takes place. Taiwan imposed a capital gains tax on stock sales for the first time ever this year. And to overcome opposition, the tax was essentially turned into a fairly tame stock transaction tax in its first 2 years. But majority KMT lawmakers proposed Thursday to water it down even further.
Taiwan's legislature will likely change existing rules on taxing stock profits into a tax in name only. Opposition lawmakers who have railed against a widening rich-poor divide but have always opposed the tax are ready to support the revision tomorrow so as to give the stock market a boost.
The KMT used its legislative majority to pass an amendment to the capital gains tax on securities. It removed the 8,500-point threshold for when the tax could be assessed, and it also passed the controversial IPO tax. Finance Minister Zhang Shenghe appeared happy the amended Securities Act had passed.
Under the new tax on stock gains to take effect next year, people who trade more than 1 billion NT dollars in stocks in a year will be required to pay a transaction tax of 0.1% on trades above the 1 billion NT dollar threshold. The head of Taiwan's financial regulator doesn't think the tax makes sense.
If we go to a restaurant to eat or to a department store to buy goods, usually the more you buy, the bigger the discount. So I don't feel it's logical if you set a threshold at which a tax kicks in, whether it be 5 billion NT or 1 billion NT.
The FSC chairman thinks the tax should be eliminated to encourage higher trading volume. But Finance Minister Zhang Shenghe said the plan allows big traders to choose to pay a tax on gains made rather than the transaction tax.
The idea is not you're taxed more the more you buy. You can choose how you report your trading activity. If you don't earn any income, you don't have to pay any tax. The less you make, the less you have to pay. That's the concept of income.
A legislative committee has postponed for 3 years a capital gains tax on stock gains that was to target the biggest traders on the Taiwan Stock Exchange. Traders were to face their choice of an extra 0.1% transaction tax on trades over an annual 1 billion NT threshold or a 15% capital gains tax. The new law was to take effect next month, but will now be shelved until further discussion in 2018.
The Ma government's push to tax capital gains on securities and raise fuel and electricity prices have proved highly controversial. And now business leaders are speaking out.
Well, the latest to vent his frustration was the head of the Far Glory Group, Zhao Tengxiong, who seemed to have enough of the constant wrangling in Taiwanese politics and wanted the government to be more accountable.
The timing in announcing a capital gains tax plan is really important. Rushing into the policy without thinking about the timing and not being prepared but moving right into implementing the policy, I think it was more brave than wise.
The business leaders, their companies hurting from a struggling global economy, have been more vocal than usual and even offered advice, hoping that the government will come to the realization that it needs to quickly focus on rescuing the economy.
One of Taiwan's most important business associations, the Chinese National Federation of Industries, issued a white paper today in which it warned that Taiwan's investment environment was deteriorating. It complained that at a time when most countries were offering incentives to invest in new businesses, Taiwan continues to put obstacles in the ways of business development.
When the government introduced the capital gains tax on stock sales, we were strongly against this. I think we need to create a good investment environment and figure out how people can make reasonable returns within the investment structure so that more people are willing to invest.
Proposals to cut or reduce the capital gains tax on stocks are making their way through the legislature, with most ruling and opposition lawmakers on board.
One key focus, to kill a previously approved but as yet unimplemented tax that targets major traders, has led critics to accuse lawmakers of pandering to the wealthy. Those concerns, though, have fallen on mostly deaf ears despite the upcoming elections.
The presidential candidates for the nation's two major parties expressed their views on capital gains tax reform.
When I entered today, they're already discussing this issue. Everybody supports it and is encouraging one another. The KMT's latest version is actually closer to the original version put forward by the DPP. I believe this is an issue we can discuss.
KMT presidential candidate Eric Ju's desire to abolish the capital gains tax on stock transactions is dividing members of the cabinet into two separate camps. Central Bank Governor Peng Huainan supports Ju's suggestion, saying the capital gains tax is just one part of a larger securities transaction tax. Finance Minister Zhang Shenghe, however, continues to support the tax.
A controversial measure to once again repeal the capital gains tax on stock investments was passed by the legislature today.
The amendment to the income tax law is expected to take effect on January 1st. The amendment was passed as the KMT holds a legislative majority. This marked the fourth time in over 50 years that the capital gains tax on stock investments has been repealed.